morning to everyone present here on a Sunday morning as the week begins. India's #1 news magazine, The Week, with 40 years of experience in journalism and with a human touch, along with Hindustan University, brings you an interesting webinar to discuss on the trends in legal education. Compared with science, technology, and medicine, legal education is less technical. Legal education in India began very early during the British period, much before India gained its independence in 1947. There were law courses. Law courses were started in the Hindu College, Calcutta, Elphinstone College, and Bombay, and at the then Madras. So over the years, there have been many changes in India's legal setup, and since independence, there have been several PILs were filed in the Supreme Court and in the High Courts for enforcement of fundamental right. Unlike then, the role of a lawyer in the society is now viewed in a much larger perspective than merely as a technical practitioner of law before the courts. So, and then with regard to the professional education also, like legal education equips law students for filling different roles in the society and discharging various law jobs. The range and the scope of law jobs have also changed over the years. It has been expanding over the years in the modern democratic society. For example, like we have the policy makers, administrators, lawyers, law teachers. There are several professions within the arena of legal education itself. So accordingly, it is realized in modern India that the legal education ought to have a breadth. It is the duty of the government to permit establishment of duly recognized private law schools and give them grant and aid like other faculty colleges. A basic knowledge of law has become necessary for all those who are engaged in administration, trade, or industry. Today, we first need judges of repute and eminence, and then the lawyers also. Since law is one of the social sciences, therefore the study of history, politics, economics, and sociology should be linked with study of law, which improves their knowledge, and then they can broaden their views from all the aspects of human society. The week's webinar on trends in legal education will throw insight into the various areas in legal education, practicality of the subjects, challenges in legal education and legal practice, and the plenty of opportunities available for the students. Joining me is a set of eminent panelists. We have with us our Rajya Sabha MP from Tamil Nadu, Mr. P. Wilson, Professor Dr. R. Venkat Rao, Chairperson, Chairperson and former Vice Chancellor of National Law School for over a decade from New Delhi, and Mr. S. Subramaniam, Founder, President, and CEO of Ascent HR, a leading consulting company in providing comprehensive HR solutions, and Dr. Vincent J. Kamaraj, Dean of Law in Hindustan Institute of Technology and Science. So I now want to invite Mr. P. Wilson, our Rajya Sabha MP from Tamil Nadu, to inaugurate the session. As you know, Wilson is a well-known personality in the legal circles and among the masses in Tamil Nadu. He is the man who fought in the court legally to get space to bury DMK patriarch M. Karunanidhi on the shores of Marina when the then AIDMK government refused space. Wilson got enrolled in the Bar Council in Tamil Nadu in 1989 and has appeared in several landmark cases in the Madras High Court and the Supreme Court. During the past 3 decades, he has appointed Wilson's experience and he has argued in several cases, several landmark cases in the Supreme Court and in the Madras High Court and in several other courts. He was appointed as Additional Solicitor General of India, Madras High Court in 2006 at the age of 41. He was the youngest Additional Solicitor General ever appointed in India. And now as MP in the Rajya Sabha, he has moved several private member bills in the Parliament in an attempt to bring changes in the legal system in India. I now invite Thiru P. Wilson to inaugurate the webinar and deliver the inaugural address. Over to you, sir, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Lakshmi. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be giving the inaugural address on such an engaging topic with respect to trends in legal education and share my experience as a lawyer belonging to this noble profession. Today, law is viewed not merely as an instrument of social control, but also an instrument of social change. Legal education means acquiring knowledge and skills of the subject of law to become a legal professional. Legal education may serve the society by imparting to law students general and cultural education, making them good law-abiding citizens. Such education will instill into the students the significance and relevance of democratic culture. As professional education, legal education equips a law student for filling different roles, filling different roles in society and discharging various law jobs, the range and scope of which is always expanding in the modern democratic society. From policy makers, then administrators, lawyers, law teachers, etc. Law, legal education, and development have become interrelated concepts in modern developing countries. The main function of legal education is to produce lawyers with social vision. However, in modern times, legal education not only produce lawyers, but also they bring well-experienced persons into the society so that they'll be very useful into the administering this nation. Just as Krishna Iyer said, profession of law is a noble calling and the members of legal profession occupy a high status. Law is the foundation of every society and it develops abiding citizens, lawyers, academicians, and aspiring judges. Historically speaking, legal education traces back to ancient period where the kings and princes were given teaching about dharma and nyaya. Then the concept of legal representatives came into existence during Mughal period. Legal education was in existence even before Indian independence, as many of our freedom fighters are from the legal background. But it gained its significance only in post-independence period. The role of a lawyer in a social welfare liberal democratic state is not an easy task for him, nor his profession. A profession which obligates him a sense of social responsibility and expects from him to work towards social development and shouldering a joint or collective obligation to do justice in a society. Lawyers have been characterized as a social engineers. A lawyer is the product of such education who is boon for the society as he works for the benefit and welfare of the society by claiming justice on behalf of his client in the court of law. I would speak on about the importance of legal education. Legal education is a broad concept. It includes a profession which is practiced in court of law, law teaching, law research, and administration in different branches where law plays a pivotal role. It injects a sense of equality before law. The standard of bar and bench is the reflection of the quality and standard of legal education acquired at the law school. Knowledge of law increases if one understands the affairs of the state. The importance of legal education cannot be overemphasized in a democratic society. It is necessary duty of everyone to know the law. Ignorance of law cannot be excused. Thus, legal education not only produces efficient lawyers, but also creates a law-abiding citizens with human values and rights. The Indian legal profession is one of the largest professions in the world, I would say, with over 1.4 million enrolled advocates nationwide. The estimated total value of the Indian legal market as in the year 2010 was approximately US dollars 1.25 billion. Historically, the members of the bar have provided leadership at a national as well as international level. Aims of legal education should not only produce lawyers, but should be regarded as instrument for social design. As we all know, legal education is a faithful subject of its society and time. We all have seen the monumental evolution that legal education has made in terms of groundbreaking landmark judgments, then opportunities and avenues that it has provided in order to ensure fair and equitable justice for all. A testament to this is however easily various legal courts of the country, tribunals, lawyers, and even legal students were able to adapt to the unprecedented change and virtual hearings brought about by COVID-19. The legal community definitely rose up to the challenge that the pandemic brought and has successfully thrived against the odds. Legal education has also evolved from it being primarily textbook oriented to a more practical approach. Compulsory internship, research projects, and court visits mandated by law colleges and universities have allowed students to not only learn about the law, but also to see and experience what is being taught. The legal society is a never-ending well when it comes to employment opportunities with various technological advances, elevating and forever changing the understanding of law. With globalization being at an all-time peak, we see an emergence in legal education taking an interest in alternate dispute resolution and a never-before-seen investigation of artificial intelligence and commitment towards a multidisciplinary approach to enacting new laws and jurisdictions in this contemporary era. It is also quite fascinating to see constitutional courts look back at several decisions of the past and reconstruct the ideals of the Constitution according to the fast-paced modern world with a keen vision, uplifting the life of the marginalized communities while working alongside state governments. The need for reformative justice and legal machinery has allowed for welcoming changes and paths that the aspiring lawyers can take to build a career of their dream while being ethical servants of the law. Coming to the role of the government in legal education, the existing legal education standard should match business demands and world's requirement. The Bar Council of India, which is a statutory body, is making attempts to alter the law school curriculum. The implementation of BCI standards has resulted in some national law schools, but that is not enough. The Advocates Act 1961 established the Indian Bar Council is a major step forward in legal education. The Bar Council has a vital role in legal education under the statute to upgrade legal education and to put down criteria of such education in discussion with Institution India. Very recently, a law academy is established in Goa to train the lawyers. This sort of establishment of law academy in every state is a need of the hour. In the state of Maharashtra versus Mahubai, the Supreme Court stated that a convincing and well-organized legal education is necessary as the global system adapts to address ever-changing issues. Programs need to be designed to equip legal practitioners to meet current and future societal needs while addressing a wide range of issues. People should be thankful for the important work that the regulatory agencies do in advancing legal education, and these efforts have not caused people to lose trust in the judiciary. Changing Indian legal education system would need hard work, creativity, and personal devotion, and will not only be a partial answer to the dilemma faced by India's legal system. The legal profession has become so challenging and interesting that gone those days when a person chooses a law as his last resort if he doesn't get admission in MBBS or engineering course. I could see the craze to join the law course, and this drastic change is due to the increase in various avenues of the practice in law. Some are constitutional law, corporate law, criminal law, employment law, environmental law, family law, human rights law, intellectual property law, law on securities, then tax law, technology law, media and entertainment law, energy law, and very recently I came across petroleum law. They are confining themselves only to the petroleum related subjects. So that is the growth of law, and that is how the profession has developed. Another thing which we have to see is about the foreign law schools. So should they be allowed to teach Indian and should be allowed to enter into India? Foreign university can help India become a hotspot of their higher education with a unrevealed value proposition of cost-effective, career-focused, and research-focused higher education for potential students worldwide. Potential international college should actively seek collaboration with credible local catalyst groups, professional agencies, and influential individuals to customize academic programs to local realities, utilize local talents, and award scholarships to worthy students. We need to provide foreign education players the freedom to design curriculum, hire faculty, form alliances, levy fees, and meet international responsibilities. Should foreign lawyers be allowed to practice India? This is another topic which we are discussing in this webinar. The Court of Justice of European Union issued a judgment that foreign law firms and solicitors may practice in India on a case-by-case basis, referred to as fly-in and fly-out. In commercial arbitration, international lawyers were permitted to practice and also were allowed to be a part of a process outsourcing corporations. A decision of the Madras High Court was successfully appealed by the BCI in the Supreme Court due to the BCI recent decision to exclude international legal firms from appearing before it. For international lawyers, the current laws on fly-in and fly-out, which allows international lawyers to fly into India to assist local clients on international disputes, remain intact. Foreign firms entering India will help the country's legal system in many ways, especially operationally. This will assist to boost standards and give support mechanism for global multinational firms operating in India. Most importantly, India's aging legal market will be revived. To be fair to the various Indian law firms, recent Supreme Court judgment seems to answer their principal concern. These Indian giants would win. However, while international corporations can help Indian law firms diversify their market, small firms miss out on this potential. A resurgence for boutique practices, particularly in India, boutique businesses have lower operating costs and face fewer challenges. India also aims to develop a world-class international arbitration facility. The country's dispute resolution system must be updated to attract foreign plaintiffs. Although these laws prohibit foreign legal firms from performing fly-in, fly-out work, MNCs may choose to include offshore mediation in their contracts. Offshore arbitration in countries like arbitration in London will benefit MNCs because settlement times are faster than India. Also, as of May 2015, the Indian judicial system had over 30 million pending cases, indicating that the aged Indian legal system will be continued to be strained. How can India isolate itself by not allowing foreign practitioners is another topic which I'm going to speak on it. Legal work is a service under the General Agreement on Trade in Services, GATS. Foreign law firms in India conduct business under Indian law. Foreign law companies and foreign legal consultants also follow Indian law. SILF President Lalit Besan responded to media inquiries by stating that his organization will allow foreign law firms to enter the Indian market, but only in stages. In the first phase, Indian businesses should have website and brochures. Second, after advertising Indian customers on international law, foreign law firms should be authorized to serve Indian clients in India. In the third steps, they should be allowed to accept collaborative ideas. Finally, law-abiding citizens should be given preferential treatment. Using Singapore as example, Besan emphasized the importance of barring foreign law firms from essential areas like defense. International law firms have already begun hiring recent law school graduates from the country. They pay them more than Indian law firms do. So if you don't allow us work in your country, we will camp outside and pay you in pounds, dollars, or any other currency you want. Finally, bringing law companies from the West will improve the Indian legal market in the long term. They will also give new law students global experience. Most Indian legal firms will be able to join international law firms as collaborators or merge with the foreign law firms' local operations. They couldn't survive as a business alone. Another benefit is reforming the legal and judicial systems. Despite long-standing opposition to foreign legal firms opening offices in India, the present administration appears to have softened its stance. India currently have over 20% of the world's attorney, indicating that it's growing market with room for more lawyers in future. Then scope of the Indian lawyers practicing in other jurisdiction is also another topic which I'm going to speak now. India is a common law country, which means it shares the system of law that most countries follow in the world. Many countries have even begun recognizing the value of Indian law, degrees, and Indian lawyers, especially in countries like Canada, USA, and UK. India, despite being a country not older than a century, have a very elaborate legal system with various laws, which laws students are required to learn over the course of their degree. Considering the fact that Indian law students often go through rigorous and grueling training to study the vast legal system that is India, the potential Indian lawyers in foreign jurisdictions is limitless. The Indian legal profession has grown over a short period of less than 50 years to become the world's largest branch of the profession. Within India, it is one of the most influential professions, having an involvement in the governance of the country. It sufficiently reflects the diversity of Indian society, its social hierarchiness and realities, and yet performs efficiently in delivering justice to litigants through courts, despite the massive pressures that courts and legal institution functions, given how unimaginably overburdened they always are. Due to globalization, the effect of the world economy are being felt, with foreign law firms seeking entry into Indian space and Indian law firms handling transactions with global implications. It is inevitable that as the nature of the legal services sought by the consumers of legal service change, with the inevitabilities of liberalization, the profession in India will evolve and rise to the challenges that may rise. Continuing legal education initiatives will need to be fostered. There is no doubt that the legal profession in India will always work closely with all stakeholders concerned to improve access to justice for all and to help realize our constitutional ideals for people from all walks of life. And I was also asked to speak on about the private member bill, which I have introduced. I have introduced 3 private member bills, in fact, during my short tenure. One important private member bill which I have introduced is the increase in the retirement age of the judges of the High Court. The present retirement age of the judges of the High Court is 62, whereas if you compare with the retirement age of the judges of the Supreme Court, it's 65. So there is a discrimination between the retirement age of the High Court judge as well as the Supreme Court judge. Therefore, I have introduced amendment to the Constitution by increasing the retirement age of the judges of the High Court from 62 to 65. The object behind is that the judges gain their experience, and that experience will be useful for the litigants as well as for this legal community. And that is why the bill which I have introduced has an object of increasing another 3 years of service. And another important thing is there will not be any race to the Supreme Court. Then another important bill which I have introduced is the establishment of regional benches of Supreme Court in 4 regions. That is one in Delhi, then Mumbai, then in Chennai, and the other one is Kolkata. These 4 regional benches will help the access to justice. You all know access to justice is a fundamental right. Now the Supreme Court, which is kept at Delhi, only person who is affluent and who is able to afford alone can go to Supreme Court, engage a lawyer and file his case. And that's how the person who is not able to afford is kept away from the stream. In fact, Dr. Ambedkar said Article 32 is heart and soul of the Constitution. So therefore, I wanted this heart and soul of the Constitution to be felt at all regional levels. And that is why I have introduced this new bills. And of course, the other bills and all, I don't want to speak on this. Therefore, in my conclusion, I would feel that I'm a firm believer of the fact that the new generation are well equipped to uplift the standards of legal jurisprudence while making the most of the unfathomable resources available to them. It's important to realize that in today's society, where swift delivery of justice is the need of the hour, the younger generation have taken it at their behest to venture into new possibilities of law and its implementation while staying true to their inherent values of our holy constitution and law. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson, sir, for the insightful inaugural address. Indeed, it was wonderful hearing you throwing light on the emergence of legal education in India, the new laws that have been enacted, the role of government in legal education, the regulatory agencies, the establishment of Law Academy in Goa, the specific areas of legal profession, the scope of foreign schools entering into Indian space, and also you touching upon the two private bills moved by you. Indeed, it was very interesting to hear you. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, Wilson, sir, for your inaugural address. Thank you for inaugurating the webinar. And now we move on to our next eminent speaker and panelist, Professor Dr. R. Venkat Rao, former Vice Chancellor of National Law School, Bangalore. Prior to this, Rao was working with the National Law School of India University, Bangalore. He assumed office as the Vice Chancellor of Law School India in May 2009. After the completion of his first term, his tenure was extended. He has a rich teaching and research experience for over 42 years. Rao sir has been instrumental in producing several renowned lawyers across the country. Now over to you, Venkat Rao sir. So please enrich our audience with insights into the present trends in legal education, the present curriculum, and how it can be modified.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. And my grateful thanks to the week for making the commencement of this week very strong with this wonderful panel discussion and such a luminous inaugural address by Dr. Wilson. And when you wanted me to speak about the transformation in legal education, I would say it is a total metamorphosis in legal education that has taken place in the last 30 years, which was beyond the comprehension of any one of us. And 1980s totally transformed the scenario with the initiative taken by the Bar Council of India for sponsoring the first national law school in Bangalore. And today, the byword for excellence in National Law School of India, University, Bangalore. And the transformation is such that the best young minds today prefer to seek admission in law schools, rejecting seats in Indian Institute of Technologies, All India Institute of Medical Sciences. In my 10-year sojourn in National Law School of India, Bangalore, I used to get bewildered to see that in each batch, there used to be at least 10 to 15 students who used to reject seats in these premier institutions of technology and medical sciences, bringing about a total paradigm shift. Because as parents, as grandparents, we were trained to note that our dream world would come crashing if our children do not get seats into medicine or engineering. But today, that's not the scenario. As my colleagues from the United States say, there the youngsters first opt for seeking admission into Yale, Harvard, Stanford in the law schools. And if they don't get, then they would try their chance in medical schools and engineering schools. And I'm sure that there is not far off when in India also, the best and better than the best minds would seek for legal education. The reason being that in our younger days, people used to say, oh, you are going to become a black coat advocate. But today, come along with me, Robert Browning says, the best is yet to be. It's not only the litigation advocacy that you can afford. And Lakshmi in the introductory remarks was referring about science and technology. And today also people say STEM, science, technology, engineering, and medicine. But I would say the future is that of the juxtaposition of science, technology, and law. You cannot compartmentalize them and you cannot read them independently. And this STEM will definitely become melts mathematics, engineering, law, technology, and science. That is the way we are moving. Because in my days, Shetlawad was the greatest advocates that this country has produced. Used to say, India had the dubious distinction of producing brilliant lawyers in spite of law colleges and not because of law colleges. People used to say, a Palkhiwala, a Daftari, a Shetlawad was an exception to the system. But today, remember, there's a total change in the scenario, especially after the advent of 5-year legal education. And this has brought about such a transformation that legal profession has become, and legal education has become the primary choice for the best minds. And when you look at the other aspects, for example, law as a 5-year course, and the practicality of the subjects that law students study. Remember, law as a 5-year course has, as I told you in the beginning, brought about a real paradigm shift in our study of legal education. And the judicious mix of social science subjects and law has made the approach totally different. Some people use the word non-law subjects, but I don't agree with them because there's nothing like non-law. Because and law is such a fascinating interdisciplinary subject and a social science. Remember that the students need to be taught about social sciences. Therefore, in 5-year courses, the subjects that they study have been very carefully and judiciously prescribed by the Bar Council of India. Here I have to say, the Bar Council of India has been playing a seminal role. And you have a curriculum development committee, the Bar Council of India, which examines periodically the relevance and contemporaneity of the subjects and keeps suggesting, keeping the core subjects always safe. Remember, the fundamental core subjects are the same. Subjects like jurisprudence, constitutional law, family law, criminal law, remember, administrative law, international law, they're always the same. And that is where you are taught fundamentals. But in tune with the changing needs, we have the introduction of subjects like cyber laws. We have the introduction of subjects like intellectual property law. Then ODR, something unheard of in our times, online dispute resolution. In fact, the scenario in the United States is such that every year more than 60 million disputes are sought to be settled through online dispute resolution mechanism. Therefore, today students study not only ADR, which is becoming fast appropriate dispute resolution mechanism, but also online dispute resolution mechanism. And then Dr. Wilson was referring to a very interesting aspect of international law, but I would say today there is a very interesting subject called private international law. And people will be surprised as to what is private international law. Because public international law deals with the relationship among the nations or the states. But today, geography is becoming a part of history thanks to globalization. As such, a citizen of a person staying in India can enter into a contract with a person staying in the United States, and the contract is to be performed in another country. And suppose there is a breach, to which court you should go to seek relief. Now, this would be answered in the subject called private international law, which is known as conflict of laws. And the future is a gold mine for people specializing in private international law. And that's a subject that we've been taught in most of the law schools. And you have I would say, with a sense of pride, that you have a brigade of specialists among the youngsters in the subject of conflict of laws and private international law. Therefore, then moving into corporate domain, remember, the sea change that has taken place is unbelievable. And the role of law firms in promoting legal profession and legal education was also beyond the comprehension of everything. Therefore, today we are witnessing a total revolution in legal education, and internships have come to stay, and they are absolutely essential for the skill development of lawyers. As you say, in the science and other subjects, the academia-industry interaction is very important to give practical skills to the students. And internships give practical skills to students who are pursuing the legal education. And the students are required to do internship with advocates, with judges, with law firms, with research institutions, depending on the aptitude. We allow the students to follow their hearts, because a student, after completing his legal education, can become a human rights activist, can become a legal processing manager. Therefore, depending on the aptitude, we'll ask them to do internship. And that internship has now become mandatory. And that internship is primarily meant to inculcate the skills. And one misconception is that as far as legal education is concerned, the same curriculum is not being taught in law schools, which is not correct, in my opinion. The Bar Council of India is the statutory authority under the Advocates of the Act of 1961, entrusted with the twin responsibility of maintaining standards in profession, not only in legal profession, but also in legal education. Because if you maintain standards in legal education today, a law student of today will become a lawyer of tomorrow. A lawyer of tomorrow will become a judge of day after tomorrow. Therefore, this Curriculum Development Committee of the Bar Council of India prescribes the syllabus. And when it is prescribing the syllabus, it prescribes the syllabus for core subjects, as I've told you. And these core subjects remain the same throughout the nation. But when it comes to specializations and optionals, the Bar Council of India had the vision, had the wisdom to look at the truth that one size shoe does not fit all the sizes. For example, for a law college situated in Chhattisgarh, in a tribal region, remember, he is required to study more about tribal laws, more about land laws, acquisition of lands, more about laws relating to forest, rather than he being taught about patent laws and intellectual property laws, etc., etc. But whether the student pursuing law in the so-called metro places or in national law schools, he will be taught intellectual property laws, copyright, patent, etc., etc. Therefore, looking at the situation, looking at the local needs, the Bar Council of India had been prescribing different optionals. And therefore, the movement from one college to another college is not that difficult, provided you have fulfilled the other requirements, because the core subjects remain the same throughout. And then the other aspect that is required to be dealt with is are the students studying archaic subjects? In my opinion, national law schools have started a wonderful experiment, thanks to the initiative taken by National Law School of India, University of Bangalore. Their teachers are given absolute independence to draft curriculum, to prepare the module, and that would be examined by an academic review committee. And you know, in national law schools, every 6 months, the curriculum keeps on getting updated and revised. And in the traditional universities also, of late, there has been a phenomenal change, and the syllabi has been revised because law is, as they say, dynamic. Law is always in a state of flux. It keeps changing with the changing needs of the society. Therefore, most of the archaic laws have been removed. Only thing is, the basic core subjects where fundamentals are required to be taught, fundamentals about, let us say, concept of liability, concept of property, okay, then constitutional values. These remain the same, essential aspects of substantive law, procedural law. But other subjects, they keep on changing. And most of the schools, they are opting for updated syllabi. And this is a phenomenon that has been taking place, especially after the birth of national law schools, because national law schools had an impact on other law schools also, other traditional universities also, where they are changing the syllabus. Therefore, the argument that still archaic subjects are taught, I don't agree with that. And subjects like consumer protection law. Now, subjects like, I belong to a generation which studied IPC, Indian Penal Code. But today's generation studies IBC, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. Okay, therefore, acquisitions and mergers, then monetization policies, all these things are studied. Therefore, in the landscape of legal education, you have a transformation. In the landscape of legal profession, you have a transformation. And for the benefit of the young friends who are following this panel discussion, I would advise them to read two very important books to understand the movement, to understand the growth in legal profession. The first one is Tomorrow's Lawyers, an Introduction to the Future, written by Richard Susskind and Daniel Susskind. How legal profession will be in 21st century. How legal profession is already shaping up in Europe, UK, United States. And the second book also written by them is The Future of Professions, where they say the future lawyer will be a legal knowledge engineer, a legal technologist, a legal hybrid, a legal process analyst, a legal project manager, then legal risk manager. Very interesting. Today, the focus is on dispute resolution. But tomorrow's lawyers will be focusing on dispute avoidance. And that is what is called legal risk management. Therefore, these are some of the areas that are emerging in legal profession. And therefore, even in legal education, there must be place for future in legal education. You must look at the future trends and prescribe the syllabus in such a way so that legal education and the law schools do not face the threat or risk of getting fossilized. These are some of the thoughts I wanted to share with you in the panel discussion on the emerging trends on legal education and in legal profession. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rao, sir, for your wonderful speech. It was indeed great hearing you on the present day trends and what changes we can look for in the future in legal education. You said there are around 16 million disputes that are settled every year. That is a huge number, which we all would not have known if not you had said that. And then you also touched upon the private international law, which helps in moving into the corporate domain. And you also touched upon the total revolution in legal education that's happening now. The internships, how internships are very important for students in getting their skills developed, and then about the law firms, the corporate firms, the transformation of legal education, dispute settlement, how now dispute settlement will be dispute avoidance in the future. That will be the future of legal education. That also you touched upon. Also, thank you, sir, for telling the students about the books they will have to read Tomorrow's Lawyers is one of the books he said. And thank you, Dr. Rao sir. Thank you so much for your insightful address. So now we move on to our next speaker, one of our eminent panelists today. We have to know about the career opportunities, the employment opportunities if we take up legal education. So the trends in legal education, you heard from Dr. Rao sir and also from Wilson about how legal education has been transforming. But it is very important to know about the career opportunities. And as I said in the beginning, law as a career is a noble profession which can bring in a social change. Now, let me invite Mr. S. Subramaniam, President, Founder, and CEO of Ascent HR. Ascent HR is a front runner in providing comprehensive human resource and compliance operation services based out of Bengaluru. Subbu, as Subramaniam sir is popularly known, is an entrepreneur and a corporate lawyer with rich experience in multiple domains, including corporate legal services, HR, finance, and business management. Over to you, Mr. Subramaniam.
Thank you, Lakshmi. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We've heard a lot from the panelists, and there's been much already said. Not much to be told specifically about the education, the trends essentially on that area. But I would say the paradigm shift in the entire services space, whether it is in legal services, whether it is any other services, be it engineering, be it medicine or anything else, the expectations of the consumer and the growth in the economy have, jointly given new spaces for operation, and this growth has brought in a lot of change in the way any profession is looked at. Law is no exception to that extent. This particular thing has been definitely owing to two key drivers. One of them, as our panelists have already mentioned, is the quality enhancement in the education pattern itself. There's been a great amount of improvement in the education system, in the law, and all other systems as well. Let's say today we focus on the law part, and also the consequential increase in the number of professionals who have emerged from such systems, who have learned a lot of new things around it. That has definitely played a major role in bringing up, with government actively pushing governance, the e-governance piece of it. So today, GRC, if you happen to hear this word, the governance, risk and compliance, this is one of the key drivers for any enterprise. No enterprise wants today to be working at odds and see if I can cross the bridge on the litigation side. So every enterprise wants to make sure that its assets and its liabilities are very, very clear, estimated, definitive. Law plays a major role in making sure that estimation is clear. As Dr. Rao was saying specifically, yes, it is not just law. The background of the person who is possibly a lawyer has become very, very, very relevant. A technology-oriented guy probably creating a lot of automation around law is one of the things that created what IBM today talks about as Watson, which is used vastly in the American judicial systems. So therefore, every person in any background of the education, when he pursues law, his opportunities are plenty. There has been no shortfall in such services opportunities today. Originally, when this entire functions and supported enterprises were created, mostly it was a unified function. We used to call it's a administrative, finance, corporate secretarial, legal, all combined as one function. The specialization which has evolved over the last 3 decades has made these functions so specific. Even within the legal departments in an enterprise, we do have corporate secretarial as a separate function, contract and vendor governance as a separate function, and possibly corporate secretarial as a separate function, this IPR as a separate function. So these opportunities have actually grown manifold, and that definitely is the cake on the table for our youngsters who are possibly our, the viewers today on this webinar. There are plenty of opportunities when it comes to independent legal practice, being part of a law firm, being possibly part of a judicial services area, civil services area, a corporate legal team, or as our panelists were mentioning about the mediation and arbitration opportunities that exist today in the globe. So this is not a small bucket for anyone to really realize. So each lawyer or an aspiring lawyer has to possibly also wonder which are his skills, which are mostly the one which can propel him to a particular profession within this bucket of services. So lawyer is not a single opportunity today. Lawyer is a multi-fold opportunity today. And that gives everybody a huge scope for growth. I believe going forward, the digitalization of the entire governance in the law itself is a huge opportunity. Cybersecurity as a law is a huge opportunity. And in terms of securities, you have been seeing the Sensex dancing up and down in the last 2 weeks, or maybe more than that in the last 6 months. The law of securities, the law of insurance. It is not one field in law which can be probably said this is a specific opportunity. It is just blown over, and then that's something that all of this audience must be really focused upon. That's a broad spectrum of what opportunity could possibly exist within it, and it varies between when he's an entrant to the services to as he scales up in the organization. The opportunities are plenty in that area. So probably I'll leave it at this point of time and probably take it up in terms of a question answer session later. The rest of them have been already said, Lakshmi. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Subramaniam, sir. I would say the Subramaniams are always well equipped with what they practice. Thank you for giving out your experiences and views on the career opportunities available to law graduates and explaining the practicality in handling the challenges thrown. So you said cybersecurity is very important now, and that is one big area which has a lot of opportunities. There is not one such field in law which alone has opportunities, is what you said. So when there is Q&A, I feel you will be able to throw out more light on the areas and where the law students can actually practice and get employment. And now we have with us Dr. Vincent J. Kamraj, Dr. J. Vincent Kamraj, Dean, School of Law, Hindustan Institute of Technology and Science. Vincent Kamraj has a rich experience as an academic and was part of the Tamil Nadu Dr. Ambedkar University. Vincent Kamraj will now tell us about the evolution of legal education and redefining legal education in the neo-normal perspective. Over to you, Kamraj, sir.
Thank you, Lakshmi. With due respects to the eminent legal luminaries who have already shared their views on legal education, Advocate Wilson, who was an eminent legal luminary, an icon of advocacy, who has taken a lot of experience in projecting legal education and proving it to be a noble profession, as Additional Solicitor General of India, Additional Advocate General of Tamil Nadu, and a Senior Advocate, now the MP of Rajya Sabha. Professor Venkat Rao, Yes, a teacher's teacher, and he has a rich experience in academia and administration. Mr. Subramaniam sir also has expressed the avenues available to legal education as well as law graduates. Hindustan Institute of Technology and Science has established a school of law. Hindustan University Institute of Technology and Science is founded with a noble objective to make every person a success and no one a failure. It is established by the founder, Dr. KCG Varghese, and now being administered by the Chancellor, Dr. Elizabeth Varghese, the Pro-Chancellor, Dr. Anand Jacob Varghese, and the Director, Dr. Ashok Varghese, the Vice Chancellor, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. Sridhara, and the Pro-Vice Chancellor, Dr. Alexander Jesudasan, and the Registrar, Mr. Pon Ramalingam, and Dr. Angelina, Dean Iantino, so many luminaries here actually. They are contributing to education, and they have been giving a much fillip and support to the School of Law established in the Hindustan Institute of Technology and Science. So I just give you the courses offered in Hindustan School of Law. In undergraduate courses, 5-year BLLB honors, 5-year BBA LLB honors, and the 3-year LLB also. In post-graduation, we have an LLM course, 1-year course in international law with twinning MOU with Chicago Kent College of Law, USA. A person joining this international law 1-year course can have exposure to the USA, Chicago Kent College of Law. They can spend time also over there. And a 2-year course, constitutional law and administrative law and the corporate law. And we have a PhD law also in Hindustan School of Law. The seminal aspects I can say, which can be emphasized here, is the global law school curriculum that has been adopted to fit in the new areas of legal education pursuant to the globalization, and even we can say the post-pandemic scenario that is afflicting or affecting the different educational modules that are being planned. Apart from the Curriculum Development Committee report and suggestions by the Bar Council of India with reference to the core areas as mentioned by Dr. Rao sir, we add so many things due to the globalized scenario in legal education. We have experienced faculty and access to online journals and databases. Every time the student can have access through their individual passwords from their homes as well, that is also given due to the need of the post-pandemic situation. The institution has smart classrooms for outcome-based learning, and ICT-supported teaching methodologies adopted in all the classes by the Hindustan School of Law. We have also established a legal aid center with client counseling facilities and pro bono service in and around the campus, and the active legal services with student participation. And they can observe what is going on during the sessions which are happening in the legal aid center established. And we are proud to say that we have skill-based and professional-oriented pedagogy. A fully functional moot court hall with regular coaching, mock trials, and intellectual legal debates to hone the skills of advocacy is the main aim of Hindustan School of Law. Fully equipped language and communicative skills lab. Every time the software which is there incorporated, and the faculty members from the liberal arts, they will always support the communication skills and language skills through access to the lab available here. The Model United Nations and the mock parliament discussions are frequently held in the School of Law, Hindustan. Teachers, they adopt the 5 E's of education along with collaborative teaching in order to make outreach to the students. Every student has to be considered as not a student who is going to be given something, but an education is learning is something student do, not something done to the student. Here, our faculty members, they first engage. They wanted to reach out to the students, their needs, their background, their interest in achieving a glorious future. Then the exploration. Then only the subject explanation, how we have to reach out to the individual student. And then elaboration through so many sources. And only finally, after giving all these, we go for the evaluation. Legal education, relating to the evolution of legal education, Dr. Rao sir has made a lot of references, how there was transformation in legal education. I must now say that legal education has evolved through different transformation. From the informal legal education in the English legal system, without any classroom lectures, only dinners, 24 dinners they have to attend, only a Latin language exam. And every law aspirant, barrister aspirant has to refer to the precedents available in the inner temple. This informal legal education gave place to formal legal education. The formal legal education to a single disciplinary education. People used to say that law is a jealous mistress. It has become a popular fallacy actually, because as Dr. Rao sir also asserted that when legal education is undertaken, the education is to be from multidisciplinary angle. That is why from single disciplinary angle, it went to transdisciplinary and multidisciplinary angle. Vishwavidyalaya, it is said, and university is. A cosmopolitanism is to be there. All subjects have to be in the avenue of education. Nothing human is alien to law, said Joseph W. Plank. Everything related to human beings have to be learned by a lawyer. Hindustan School of Law has the support of about 30 departments in engineering technology, the aeronautical engineering, then the liberal arts and food technology, allied health sciences, and so many support we are getting in the aspects of this multidisciplinarity. And now the legal education has transformed from even a multidisciplinary education to a digital transformation, the ICT supported legal education, followed by the virtual courts and online courts. Online legal education practices everything. Here in Hindustan School of Law, we have better avenues for clinical legal education, ODR and ADR, client counseling and online sharing of documents. Everything is being followed and trained to the students. And the pro bono practice, the centers, the students are permitted to reach out to the needy people. The voiceless millions who have denied access to justice can also get help from the Hindustan School of Law in the Padur campus. And know so many people. It is actually established with a very big campus of real infrastructure, more than 100 acres of land, and several lakh square feet of construction is available. But it is surrounded by IT sector companies, the corporate giants. Apart from the ordinary people living around, they need legal assistance, legal aid and advice. That is being done. Apart from these things, in Hindustan School of Law, we have moot court practice, regular sessions, national and international levels. In the legal education transformation, we can see that this post-pandemic system, even the international moot court competitions are held through online system, and the International Law Students Association is sponsoring certain programs, and our law school is collaboratively supported by Surana and Surana attorneys. They are always there conducting many national law school, national moot court competitions as well as international moot court competitions. Much of the competitions are being organized by Surana and Surana attorneys, and they have entered into an MOU with us, and we are doing the needful for the students. Decades back, there were legal education in a different area. Dr. Rao sir said about Richard Saxon, who has written a book, Tomorrow's Lawyers. And the same authors have written another book, The End of Lawyers. The reason is, this actually, it was written in 1980s. Now the artificial intelligence is taking shape and substituting the other support. And that was envisioned by these writers in 1980s. They were actually private or personal assistants to the foreign minister in England. But they have written this book envisioning that it is going to be like this. In USA, the predictability of outcomes in litigation can be gauged out through the artificial intelligence support in data analysis and data accumulation. But in the modern world, we have to tune ourselves to such a change because of the globalized scenario that we encounter in almost all the disciplines, all the fields of education, especially legal education. Access to knowledge in digital form is always there. And our library is endowed with almost all the online journals for law. And the digital form is always available to the students also. They can have access, and there is to be a synchronized education because of the non-formal reversion that we have to make it. Digitalization of learning and teaching outcomes. Here, the one-to-one, face-to-face is replaced by the mobile presence. Tapping of smart classroom elements through digital boards, PPTs, and interactive analysis of online materials. And here in Hindustan School of Law, because of its technological excellence and the support they are giving through their infrastructure, we are able to reach out to the students where the online education through continuous assessment projects, assignments, everything to supplement and substitute the traditional inertia afflicting education in all spheres, especially in legal education. Now we are making available to the students the pre-recorded materials, audiovisual aids, and lectures in digital form also. There is a gap which is bridged. As per the Bar Council of India vision of legal education, the integration of legal education has come into place. The 1980s. Earlier, legal education was entirely different. The integrated law school curriculum has come into place, and every law student has to study law along with a package of art subjects also. So here the full integration is completely available in the Hindustan School of Law because there is the first semester itself. One course is introduced in the ICT technology. It is handled by the engineering faculty. It is available to all the students. And because in the future, all the lawyers are going to be trained in this technology support in legal practice as well as legal education. The curriculum content itself, the cyber law, the environmental law, international trade, aviation law, the space law, because Hindustan Institute of Technology and Science is famous for its aeronautical engineering, the #1 institution which is catering to the need of this. So we have added several honors courses in the international trade, maritime law, forensic science, and criminal investigation also, and through psychoanalysis, so many additional honors courses. The BCI specifies 20 core legal courses and practical courses. Apart from that, the honors courses, we have added 10 honors courses to the curriculum development committee report of BCI, which makes it available to the law learners. Hindustan with better information dissemination infrastructure available because of the interdisciplinary atmosphere, wider perspective, and a multifaceted approach here. Every library here is endowed with digital databases. There are numerous online journals and books, manuals, and judgments available to every student of law. The MS Teams and other modules, they are actually endowed with separate efficient IT department also that is supporting us. The online courses, continuous assessment, online exams and correspondence, everything is facilitated by the infrastructure support offered by the Hindustan Institute of Technology and Science. And the students now can easily adapt to digital transformation subject to the better connectivity in their own areas. But the institution is fully with them to add to their passion of learning. In legal education, clinical legal education plays a very important role. If you go to the Harvard Law School, the pro bono building is the much bigger building than the other classrooms and other buildings. And pro bono is being done with full actual service oriented hearty outcome. Practical orientation and motivation and honing the skills of advocacy through mooting and other international events. And online client counseling is also, it is resorted to, and online dispute resolution, ADR mediation skills are being trained to the students, and they are all the students, they are permitted to sit and observe what is going on here. The enlightened faculty are rendering legal service to the needy people. The other soft skills and online and virtual course hybrid system is going to stay beyond the pandemic. That is why we have to get ready for it. And one more very important thing before winding up, I should say that the placement opportunities are abundant in Hindustan School of Law. The reason is that several corporate companies are visiting the Hindustan campus for the purpose of providing this placement opportunities. And since employment-oriented professionalized education is provided in Hindustan School of Law, the opportunities are more. The corporate projects are also being offered. In Hindustan, there is a research wing which has more than 600 PhD scholars doing research at a time. And for Hindustan School of Law also, research scholars are doing their part. And the research projects, the funding agencies, access and exposure is abundant in Hindustan Institute of Technology and Science, and an efficacious placement cell under eminent, efficient placement officers. They are able to mobilize this visit of corporate bodies and need-based, and most of the corporate bodies will definitely have a place for the legal professionals also, as Subramaniam sir is going to lay bare the different opportunities for the law professionals also in the corporate world. So training support for the beginners as well as bridge courses for placement opportunities are also being provided by this placement cell. And the HR skill, constant practice and fine tuning, they facilitate better professionals in Hindustan School of Law. Now, these are the very important opportunities that I could say something about. And I entreat all those who are interested in getting an avenue in law, legal profession. I call upon the young minds, the budding lawyers, the enlightened, already elite group of people to have an opportunity to enter the campus of Hindustan School of Law and get legal knowledge with the support of this infrastructure of ICT, technological support, and all the infrastructure that you could see once you visit the campus. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I am able to say something and ready to explain the question and answers. Thank you, Lakshmi. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, Kamraj sir. Thank you for telling us about the infrastructure and the facilities available at the Hindustan University, at the Hindustan Law School, and also telling us about the opportunities that are available, the how digitally equipped the law school is, and the transformation that's going to happen in the over the years. Thank you so much for enlightening us, sir. And now, students and others who are listening to the webinar, this has been, we have come to the end of the webinar, almost to the end of the webinar. Like we have told you about the every aspect in legal education, right from the practicality of the subjects, the modern trend, the existing hiccups in taking up law, the opportunities that are available, and also what challenges the industry will throw to the law graduates. We were joined by Dr. Venkat Rao, Ms. Subramaniam, and Dr. Vincent Kamraj. They gave us a lot of information about the trends in legal education. And now the session is open for interaction. But we have time constraint now, and because of the time constraints, we have the questions that I have received. I've taken up only a few questions, which will be thrown to Dr. Rao, Mr. Subramaniam, and also to Dr. Vincent Kamraj. And later, all the other questions that you have sent to us will be answered through email. We will send the answers to your mailbox. Please excuse us for taking only a few questions. I have chosen the question based on the importance and which are quite related to the topic and which are very important. So, before thanking our panelists, let me throw a few questions to them. First question is to Dr. Venkat Rao. Sir, can you repeat the name of the two books that you prescribed? This was a particular question from one of the students because he wants to pick up those books and read it.
Yeah. See, the first book is The Future of the Professions. Okay. And the second book is Tomorrow's Lawyers, an Introduction to the Future, both authored by Richard Susskind, R-I-C-H-A-R-D S-U-S-S-K-I-N-D, and Daniel Susskind, D-A-N-I-E-L-S-U-S-S-K-I-N-D. These are the two books which I made reference to, and these are seminal books. In fact, they have also written a book called Online Courts and the Future of Justice. That book also is absolutely essential. Okay, these are the three books. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for telling out the name of the two books once again. And then there is a question from a student who had completed her undergraduate course 2 years ago. She says she's really interested in legal education, but her particular question is, will it be too late now after the break to pursue her dreams? Also, she wants to know the job scope after completing LLB. I want Dr. Venkat Rao to take up this, and also Dr. Vincent Kamraj to reply. If Hindustan University can offer a space for a student who took a break.
So I would say it is never too late. See, 2 years gap, perhaps is a judicious gap. Okay, she must have grown in life, and she can pursue her education master's program depending on her aptitude. And as far as the job market is concerned, let me tell you, even the sky is not the limit. That's the opening for a law graduate. The bottom may be crowded, but there is enough room at the top, provided you deserve it. Therefore, all the best, my little angel, and let Mr. Vincent Kamraj pick up the gauntlet exactly from here. But
thank you, Dr. Venkatraj, sir. Actually, there are a lot of opportunities which Mr. Subramaniam sir also is going to say. I would say that the corporate world is completely open for law graduates, because there are so many placements, not only as legal advisors and those who would be able to help them draft documents, but the HR professionals also, if a law graduate is there, they are most welcome because of the in-house legal support that they can provide to the corporate firms. You can become a judge. You can enter into the judiciary because for women, there are better opportunities there in several placement opportunities as in the judiciary, from the lower, that is subordinate judiciary to the higher level also. Apart from that, the legal education through Hindustan, because of the twinning arrangement with the Chicago Kent School of Law, you can enlighten yourself, as Dr. Rao sir said, this private international law sphere, and then have more access to an international practice also. Here, in aviation law, in space law, IPR, cyber law, international trade, international commercial law. Now, all these are actually added subjects in the curriculum, which is actually based on a global law school curriculum at the Hindustan School of Law, which actually gives opportunity for any law graduate to choose their own way, choose their own line, their road. The path is never ending. It is, world is something like an ocean. The opportunities are like ocean. You can find out.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes. Let me also throw the same question, the same kind of question to Ms. Subramaniam. Like, there is a particular question. She wants you to explain about the legality of the courses related to legal and paralegal works offered by various online edutech companies. And also, after LLB, what are the job opportunities that are available for a law student?
Sure, Lakshmi, as you used the word rightly, paralegal is a big community. I mean, paralegal is probably big and larger than the legal community itself, which is a support system essentially. It is not just the jobs in the law firms and outside perimeter. We also have a lot of legal process outsourcing companies in India, LPO area, okay, in which not exactly the complete graduation is a requirement, but the knowledge and the skill is more a requirement. Therefore, anyone who has an adequate communication, commitment, and skill can get an opening in terms of an LPO or possibly in the paralegal department of any company or even an outsourcing company. Essentially, in either of these situations, it's a very normally available part. Two critical areas one should observe in a legal profession. A profession is a very demanding profession. It's a prestigious profession. It is financially rewarding. At the same time, it is extremely challenging. Therefore, people aligned to this profession must be willing to commit time and energy to it, and it is not merely a 9-to-5 job. Keeping this in mind, yes, both paralegal opportunities and legal opportunities are plenty in the organization today, any organization today. And every organization wants to be sure that the compliance is 100% zero tolerance approach basis one. No more the cross the bridge part. Therefore, that being a kind of a philosophy of both the corporations and the intent of the government at large. Government doesn't spare anybody. I mean, for simple reasons, they are bringing amendments and legal notifications saying that you will be penalized if you do not follow this particular process. So the procedural law, which is bulking up, which is a maturity process essentially, is leading into a lot of opportunities. And I believe that it's as Mr. Rao said, it's sky's the limit. But yes, commitment, dedication, communication, articulation, they are very critical for a lawyer because he has to understand the subject, not just of law. He has to understand something more deeper than the law. that is something that both Dr. Vincent also expressed on the issue in terms of how the school actually does the job for these people. That's my answer to this.
Subramaniam sir, if you could add one more thing to what you said now. Like, there is a particular question from a student who has done her LLM business law in Ambedkar Government Law College. She's asking like how she can apply to a foreign law firm, and she's also a patent agent and has been with IP law firms. So applying to law firms in foreign countries or like UK and Canada, how does this work? So we have plenty of opportunities in India itself. Beyond India, if suppose they are looking to go out of India, what are the opportunities in the law firms there and how to apply?
Okay, two things you must, probably address and realize before we probably proceed to this question is that the opportunity landscape in India and more specifically in Asia is probably not even comparable to anything that today exists in, let's say, a US or a Europe. This was a case possibly 10 years back or 20 years back. But the amount of and the quantum of opportunity available in the India and the Asian space is so large. Seeking an opportunity beyond may not be of much of a sense, but at the same time, there are restrictions in terms of eligibility to probably practice or be part of a law firm. Given they may have to go under some certifications internally at a particular geography, whether it is UK, whether it is Canada, whether it is USA. So each bar council may also have certain restrictions and rules on those areas. That's one part of it. The common law, while it is literally common in most of the senses, in the sense if you look at the British law, we mostly follow the common law in this area. So therefore, it is largely similar in nature and applicability. At the same time, it has its own intricacies, its own nuances in this issue. Therefore, if you are looking at a specialized law, something like patent, something like cybersecurity, something like law of securities itself or insurance, which are possibly universally grown as a single branch of practice, and they're not very, very different. Other branches of this practices could be different from geography to geography, and seeking something as an opportunity outside for an Indian lawyer may not be advisable unless they want to probably undergo certain amount of additional training or certification needs. That is something they should keep it in mind. While whatever qualifications that you mentioned about this lady, well, there are plenty of opportunities in India. Business law, there are plenty of them in India. That's something that she can keep in mind as well.
Thank you, Subramaniam sir. Thank you so much. And Venkat sir, there's a question to you. One particular question from a student in Bombay. He wants to know, like, if an advocate or a lawyer will have to be proficient in English language, or is it enough if the person, the law graduate, wants to practice in courts? If he wants to practice in courts, it is enough if he is fluent in his mother tongue. Like, the question is from a student in Bombay whose mother tongue is Marathi. So is that possible? This one particular question, I think this will be a basic doubt everyone has.
Yeah. Language is no barrier when there is conceptual clarity and factual accuracy. Okay. Though English language as a link language will open the world to you. Okay. Vernacular also plays an important part, especially in the courts. We do not mean by courts only High Courts and Supreme Court. Well, in High Courts and Supreme Court, proficiency in English language does give you an edge. There is no doubt about it. But people who are proficient in vernacular and who practice in the so-called mufsil courts, where 99% of the litigation takes place. Remember, High Courts and Supreme Court cover only 5% of the cases where questions of law are decided. Okay, and therefore, please focus on knowledge of fundamentals, develop strong fundamentals, have conceptual clarity, and language will never be a barrier. Okay, and don't have that psychological difference, please. Okay, right.
One point I would add, language barrier is always there because almost all the law reports, almost all the decided cases, the precedents, you have to browse only through English language. That is a problem because the common law is the basic principle, is actually building up a legal system in several common law countries. Another very important aspect is that this English fluency as well as lack of fluency as a predicament is actually a myth. It is not a reality. When you just go into the practice, you will be able to easily get over it, and you can overcome every hurdle because
Yes, sir.
as Dr. Rao said, that conceptual clarity, that is more important for any lawyer to go and approach it.
Yes, certainly. Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for the reply. Dear audience, we will have to close the webinar As I said, we have got several number of questions, more than 500, 600 questions from all of you. There was a very good response from the audience, and there were quite a number of registrations. Thank you so much, everyone. We are coming to the close of the webinar. Let me thank all the panelists. Let me thank Dr. Venkatarao. Let me thank Mr. Subramaniam. Let me thank Dr. Vincent Kamraj, and also Mr. P. Wilson for inaugurating the webinar. This webinar was, of course, a wonderful, insightful webinar indeed. I hope everyone, our audience, were able to take the best they wanted. Thank you all. See you once again when we discuss yet another interesting subject. Wish you a very happy Sunday and a very happy week ahead. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us.